Hi everyone, welcome back to the Tox Lab. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Rob. This week we thought we'd look at a couple of the strangest overdoses recorded in history. Rebecca, what's the longest you've ever stayed awake?
I think my attempt is probably really sad. I never pulled all-nighters at uni, so I can't imagine it's more than 20 hours.
20 hours?
I need sleep.
I've definitely done 24. I'm not sure I've done much more than that. Imagine a whole week while skiing through the wilderness.
That sounds horrendous.
So one of the stories we're going to look at this week is the story of Aimo Koivunen, a Finnish soldier from World War II. March 1944. Deep in the frozen forests of Lapland, a small group of Finnish soldiers glides across the snow. Their skis whisper against the ice as they push forward, muscles burning, lungs screaming for air. Behind them, Soviet forces closing in fast. They've been skiing for hours, maybe days. If they stop, they'll almost certainly die. One of them, Aimo Koivunen, can feel his body shutting down. He's slipping behind his platoon. His vision is blurry. His legs feel like lead. He's got one choice. He fumbles in his pocket, hands shaking, and pulls out a tin of pervitin, Nazi methamphetamine, designed to keep soldiers awake for days. He was supposed to take one pill, but there was no time to count. He swallows them all, and that's when things got weird. So World War II, Finland was in the midst of a struggle with the Soviet Union at this point. Koivunen was part of a Finnish ski patrol. They were a scouting expedition and they would operate deep behind enemy lines. And they got ambushed. And so basically they ran and were pursued across the ice. And the soldiers at this time were issued with Nazi methamphetamine pills. So I want to drill a bit into pervitin, issued by the German military. One pill was supposed to be good to keep a soldier going for a whole day and a whole night. And you can imagine, in this moment of desperation, skiing through the snow, gloved hands probably numb from the cold, in a mitten, that sort of thing. He just tipped them out and necked the lot. 30 pills. So it was meant to be, he basically took a month's worth, or the whole platoon's worth.
Which can't have ended well.
Well, imagine this. A rush of energy, his body suddenly feeling a lot lighter. His legs don't feel like lead anymore. He is flying through the snow. His heart rate increased a bit. He felt good. His heart rate increased a bit more. Eventually things started getting weird. Things like hunger, exhaustion, pain, they weren't things he was feeling anymore. They'd been completely overridden. He started suffering hallucinations. He thought he was being chased by spectres. He saw shapes in trees, things that weren't there. He heard voices, and he got lost. He skied away from his squad, and he just ended up completely alone out in the wilderness. One minute he was with them, the next he was gone. And he wandered this frozen landscape, starving, hallucinating. Somehow, he didn't die. He managed to survive eating pine cones and a bird, a Siberian jay, which he caught and killed and ate raw. And he skied over 100 kilometres. When Finnish troops finally found him, he was basically unrecognisable. He had lost over 20 kilo, but weirdly his heart was still doing 200 beats per minute.
Oh my goodness, that's insane.
And yet he was somehow still alive. So why didn't he die? Well, let's have a look into this. So let's look at what happens in methamphetamine overdose and actually what happened in this case. So methamphetamine overdose can cause pathologies in a few different ways. Essentially, it overloads your sympathetic nervous system, so you get an extreme fight or flight response. Blood glucose goes up, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up. You get extreme vasoconstriction in the sort of periphery. And normally, in normal situations, cause quite significant toxicity. But in this case, because of his extreme environment, he was skiing through the snows of Lapland, actually it worked to his advantage. The other thing methamphetamine does is it it skyrockets your metabolic activity, so it increases your body temperature. And another symptom of methamphetamine toxicity is hypothermia. But again, he was out in the cold, and this possibly actually stopped him from freezing to death. It kind of kept him alive. And finally, methamphetamine can cause neurological toxicity, brain damage, seizures, that sort of thing. And this was probably why he was paranoid and hallucinating and seeing things that weren't there. But again, a lot of the brain damage that comes is actually from cerebral edema, so the swelling of the brain. And again, this extreme cold environment stopped some of that effect happening. There's a few other hypotheses as well. So his heart rate was still high even a week later. And so it is hypothesised that extreme cold, not only did it prevent him from suffering from hypothermia, but actually may have slowed his metabolism down a bit to stop the absorption and to kind of reduce the methamphetamine all hitting at once.
Oh, okay.
And often actually with methamphetamine toxicity, there's often polydrug use is mixed in with other things, alcohol, benzos, that sort of thing. And in this case, obviously there wasn't. It was just pure pharmaceutical grade methamphetamine. So he really was very, very lucky. So what happened to Aimo Koivunen? So he actually lived until 1989. And he shows that actually if you can survive a meth-fueled ski trip through a war zone, you can probably survive most things. He has become a bit of a legend. He really is one of the earliest, or possibly the earliest, case report of stimulant overdose amongst military personnel. And stimulants are used quite a bit in the military, even now, actually, to keep pilots awake and things like that. He really is worth looking up on Wikipedia, if only to see his photo, because he looks like he's been at the methamphetamine in that
really
photo.
Does.
So, Rebecca, why don't you tell us your story of stimulant overdose?
So this week, I'm going to be talking about the story of the cocaine bear, or more affectionately known, I really like this nickname, Pablo Escobar.
Oh, nice.
So this story kind of came to my attention. It's been made into a film, like a comedy horror film that came out only a couple of years ago, I think 2023. And it's very loosely, I want to emphasise that it's very, very loosely based on this story. So our story begins with a man named Andrew Carter Thornton II. He was born October 30th, 1944 in Kentucky and grew up on his parents' stud farm where they bred racehorses. He attended private school, was part of the polo club, and then went to a military academy. He briefly attended the University of Kentucky for a semester, but then dropped out to join the army, where he trained as a paratrooper for the 82nd Airborne Division. During his service, he participated in the US invasion of the Dominican Republic in 1965 and was even awarded a Purple Heart for his service. So after his stint in the army, he joined the Lexington Fayette Urban County Police Department in 1968, where he earned his degree in law enforcement. He then served on the narcotics squad between 1970 and 1973, and it's here that he got a taste for smuggling drugs rather than laying down the law. In 1977, he resigned from law enforcement and started practicing law in Lexington, Kentucky. And about 4 years later, he was arrested with 25 others for weapons theft from the China Lake Naval Weapons Center and conspiring to smuggle 1,000 pounds of marijuana into the US. And because of his experience flying planes and as a paratrooper in the army, he was the pilot for this mission. And it transpired during this time that he was part of a dope and gun running syndicate known as the Company, which had upwards of 300 members, including other former Lexington police officers, and had $26 million worth of boats and planes at their disposal.
Wow. That's quite an operation, right? This wasn't small fry.
Oh no, this is definitely up there. And it gets even more dramatic. After he pled not guilty, when he was arrested, he fled California and was arrested after a massive manhunt and months as a fugitive. And he was caught wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a pistol. So on what would be his last smuggling mission, running drugs from Colombia into the US, in September 1985, Thornton and his partner jumped from his autopiloted Cessna 404 after dumping packages of cocaine out over the state of Georgia, because their plane was apparently too heavy to cope with both of them and the load of cocaine that they decided to smuggle back. It's the sort of thing I thought you would factor in when smuggling drugs.
But, I mean, Cessna, even a small Cessna, how much cocaine were they carrying,
Quite a
right?
bit,
It must have been quite a bit.
So on this fateful jump, Thornton's parachute had failed to open properly, and he unfortunately fell to his death, landing in a driveway in Knoxville, Tennessee, with about 75 pounds of cocaine valued at $15 million strapped to him. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, had expensive Italian shoes on, had about $4,500 in cash, 6 1-ounce gold Krugerrands, knives.
What's a Krugerrand?
They're like little gold South African coins.
Okay.
I think they're worth quite a bit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and also had some weapons on him as well. So what does an American black bear have to do with the story? So 2 months later, a 200-pound female black bear was found dead in the Chattahoochee National Forest in Georgia, surrounded by the remaining 40 open bags of cocaine. An autopsy carried out found that the bear's stomach was full to the brim, and the bear had suffered from cerebral hemorrhage, respiratory, cardiac and renal failure, hypothermia and a stroke. Unsurprisingly. But that's not the end of the bear's story. The bear was taxidermied and put on display at the Chattahoochee River National Recreational Area. At one point ended up in a traditional Chinese medicine shop in Reno and can now be found in the Kentucky Fun Mall in Lexington.
Wow.
So if anyone's been there, I'd kind of like to know whether it's worth a trip. Apparently they sell lots of merch related to the cocaine bear. Sounds like a fun day out.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
What a trip.
Road trip.
Yeah.
So both these stories are quite strange, aren't they? One, soldier taking 90 milligrams of methamphetamine whilst fleeing Soviets. The other, a bear eating 34 kilos of cocaine or whatever it was in the woods. One obviously survived, one didn't. Well, I'm not surprised the bear didn't survive.
I'm not surprised.
Are these the strangest cases of overdose ever been recorded?
I don't know.
Or are there weirder ones out there?
I'm sure there are some weird ones. If anyone knows of any really weird cases that you'd like us to cover, please let us know.
Yeah, that would be really good. Are there any other stories of wild animal exposure to drugs? This can't be the only case, right? This must happen.
It can't be, and I feel like animal exposure to drugs does seem to be on the rise a bit. Between 2009 and 2014, the proportion of calls to the American Animal Poison Control Centre related to dogs being exposed to cannabis nearly doubled.
That probably coincides with changes in legislation, right? And
probably
increases in availability of
and
so
where
on.
There are increased prevalence of drug use, animals are always more at risk of being exposed. There is also another interesting case of a wild animal being exposed to cocaine. Apparently there's a wild cat captured in Cincinnati that had cocaine in its system.
Okay, sure. So it's somehow similar to the bear, I guess.
I
Found
guess.
some in the woods. The cocaine bear's interesting, isn't it? Because you said at the start they turned it into a movie. I've never seen the film. I understand it's nothing like the story you've just told.
No, I think they spend quite a lot of time on the bear going through a rampage in the woods whilst high on cocaine, which there's no evidence that the bear in the real story actually did. It was found dead surrounded by packets of cocaine and things.
I was going to say, if it did, it would have gone on a rampage and then gone back to where it found the cocaine to die, which seems unlikely.
Would have been weird.
I feel like Aimo's story would be a really good film.
I think it would. I'd definitely watch that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it would certainly be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you've got all the ups and downs of a really good movie in there.
And a happy ending.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Which is so rare with cases like this. That they actually turn out okay.
That is true.
It's a really nice story.
So I think we've got a couple of takeaway lessons, haven't we? Although they're probably obvious. Don't take 30 meth pills and go skiing. Don't leave your cocaine where a bear can find it.
I mean, it's all definitely sound advice.
So I think we're going to wrap it up there. I hope you've enjoyed listening this week. Do give us a like and follow on social media, or indeed get in touch with other stories that you'd like us to cover.
So you can find us on Instagram at @the_tox_lab. Feel free to comment on any of our posts about any of our episodes. You can send us a direct message with any of your suggestions. For those of you who don't use social media, we now have an email, so you can email us at thetoxlab@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, as always, with any feedback or suggestions or content for future episodes. Hope you all have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time. Bye!